Hello, everyone. Right off the bat, I am not going to talk about my really cool VW van today. When it was announced that I was going to do a talk, a certain faculty colleague of mine expressed his disappointment and in the fact that I wasn't going to talk about it. And so I thought I should put this up. So Mr. Scartle, wherever you are, this is for you. Now get off my back. I am here to talk about something else. Several years ago, I saw a video clip of this guy, Jack Ma, billionaire founder of Alibaba Group, one of China's biggest technology companies. In that video, from the World Economic Forum in Davos in 2015, Ma recounted some of the epic failures he had experienced. Failures on exams in school, failures in applying for university, failures in applying for jobs. The point behind his message, generally, was all about not giving up, particularly in the face of colossal and repeated failures. On the surface, not a bad idea. But I was fundamentally bothered by one thing. Why the heck should I be listening to a multi-billionaire about the value of failure? I mean, he's not famous because of his failures. He's famous because of his successes. And frankly, because of his billions. I don't think anyone came knocking on his door seeking advice when he was rejected by KFC when they first came to China and he went looking for a job. Or by Harvard after he had submitted his 10th unsuccessful application. I mean, really, who would? So what the heck is he going to teach me about failure? I know, I can hear it already from you. That's a pretty cynical way of looking at things. I mean, if he hadn't learned from his failures, he wouldn't have been so successful, right? Well, that's all well and good, but I was still bothered by this idea that I should revere his perspective on failure just because he was one of the lucky few who was able to bounce back from his failures. Because in reality, most people don't. I mean, failure in business can have calamitous impact on an individual's financial health. And considering how often it happens, the devastation can be huge. I mean, just think about restaurants, for example. I mean, there are varying figures out there, but the consensus is that the majority of restaurants that open will be closed and shuttered within 5 years. That's huge business failure. And beyond the financial impact, failure can have devastating consequences on an individual's mental and physical health. I mean, it is certainly not all sunshine, rainbows, and unicorns when you record an epic fail. It all got me thinking about this idea of learning from failure and how it's peddled in the media and in popular culture, and by whom. And very soon it became clear that embracing failure was this critical character trait that was required for people who wanted to be more successful in business. And it was being propagated by other people who wanted to profit from it, other people in business, people who wrote about business, people who thought about business. So why be bothered by this? I mean, if it's all about just people in business talking to other people in business about failure, what's wrong with that? Well, the problem is, it hasn't just stayed in the realm of business. This idea of embracing failure has become a broader phenomenon, well beyond the business arena. Consider this book, Failing Forward by John Maxwell. I mean, the author wanted to help people cope with failure. Noble, right? Because in life, the question is not if you will have problems, but how you're going to deal with them. All right, sounds good. Stop failing backward and start failing forward. What the hell does that mean? I mean, I think I get the author's intention, but what? I mean, as a lesson in failure, this author has succeeded big time, because there ain't no way I'm going to buy that book because of that quote and that title. But I think that's where the problem lies. I mean, this author was probably really well-intentioned, and there's probably some good things in his book. But someone took his message and packaged it in some bite-sized, tweet-sized, snap-sized way and turned all the focus on the failing. They tried to make failure marketable. They tried to make failure sexy because then it would sell. Well, guess what? Failure is not sexy. Failure sucks. And I really think it unfortunate that embracing failure has been seen as this admirable character trait. I mean, if you're a privileged, well-connected business person, the impact of failure could potentially be mitigated. But for the rest of us, failure can have serious and long-lasting consequences. Anyways, I do not want my surgeon embracing failure when operating on me. And you don't hear many skydivers talking about bouncing back from failure, because they don't bounce. Sorry, too much dark humor there. In making failure this cool buzzword in business, this idea of embracing failure has become, crept into other areas of our lives, particularly when it comes to parenting and child development. These days, it's easy to find all sorts of experts peddling books and resources, targeting parents who want to help their kids cope with failure. Give your children what they need. Let your children fail. It sounds like a good idea in theory, but it's a whiplash reaction to something else. It's all about this prevalence of helicopter parenting or snowplow parenting or whatever parenting phenomena you have to use to explain the fact that so many kids have never experienced adversity, let alone failure, because their parents have done everything in their power to ensure that their lives are devoid of it. As an educator, I know all about the adverse impacts that can happen to a kid because of the actions of their helicopter, snowplow, bulldozer parents. And so I understand that letting them fail might be an attractive idea. But as an educator, I also know how devastating that failure can be to a young person. I get its impact. Failure can be absolutely detrimental to the confidence, well-being, and sense of self-worth of a young person. I would never encourage a young person to embrace failure because, frankly, all of you are still figuring out how to understand and cope with everything that's happening in your life, the good and the bad. And failure is just about the worst thing out there. You're all building those skills, and you will be for some time. On the other hand, building resilience in the face of adversity, developing a growth mindset that can help you foster a desire to learn, help you persist in the face of setbacks, help you value effort, and help you learn from criticism. These are things that can be taught to you, and they should be. It's not about focusing on how to react to the outcome, not figuring out what to do once you've failed. Rather, the better approach is to focus on trying to avoid failure in the first place. What it's all about is recognizing and managing risk so that you can avoid failure. It's about embracing challenges, which, yes, can be risky, instead of embracing failure. Think about it. Sports teams train and practice hard before a game so that they can increase the chance of winning and decrease the chance of losing. They don't decide on how to win only after they've lost. Students don't go into an exam having not studied and going cold. You don't decide to do the work only after you've bombed the first test. My surgeon does a lot of research and looks at a lot of data before operating on me. And skydivers, doing the riskiest thing in the world, jumping out of an airplane, they pour countless hours and time into minimizing, if not eliminating risk. Because, frankly, the old adage is true. Sometimes failure is not an option. Let's face it. It is inevitable that at some point in your lives, you are all going to experience failure of some kind. That is not in question here. Because with life comes failure, full stop. But I bet when it happens, you're not all going to cheer. You're not going to be celebrating, saying, hey, no worry, because I'm embracing failure. For those of you who know me, I'm rather a dramatic teacher in the classroom. And I come by it naturally because I am a little bit of an actor. I've acted in stage plays for many years now, and I've even acted on this stage in this beautiful theater. 5 years ago, a director friend of mine was putting on a production, and he sent me the script to read. And as soon as I read it, I fell in love with it. And I fell in love particularly with one of the lead roles. In fact, the more I read, the more I was convinced this was my role. Oh, it was juicy, baby. I had to play this role. And I let my friend know that. And I had acted for him in several productions before, so he knew me and he understood. He knew that this was what I wanted. But of course, I still had to audition. So, go to the audition. Step 1, went great. Check. The callback, not quite as great as I hoped. I mean, it came at the end of a long day of work and I was feeling pretty tired, but no worries, because that role was mine. I knew it, my friend knew it. Come on. I was fixed on this belief that I was going to get that role. Well, I bet you can guess where this is going. When I think back, I'm actually quite surprised at how emotionally wrecked I was from failing to get that part. I was absolutely devastated. It just knocked me off my feet. And even though my friend offered me a supporting role in the production, that experience has kept me off the stage ever since. That failure sucked. Big time. I mean, did I learn from that failure? Well, yes, of course I did. After a very long time, I could look back and deconstruct what I have done and what I didn't do for my audition and in preparation for my callback. And I could definitely understand and recognize my hubris in thinking that me getting the part was a foregone conclusion. But don't you dare tell me to embrace that failure. It was absolutely awful. And I never, ever want to go through anything like that again. Listen, I do have a different mindset about acting. And I use that mindset to think about a role when it comes up. And that mindset has very positively impacted other parts of my life. But I don't think back and say, I'm so glad I failed because of all the things I learned. I don't focus on the failing. Indeed, I think if I were to write a book, and trust me, that's not going to happen, I think this would be the title. Great graphics, eh? I wouldn't try to glorify failure. And I wouldn't try to make myself out to be this sleek, edgy celebrity for embracing it. As an educator, I really savor those opportunities when I can help my students to understand the risks associated with what they want to do, to understand and to manage them. It's my job to push them to challenge themselves, but not haphazardly, because challenges are awesome. Pushing yourself out of your comfort zone is awesome. Always striving for more is awesome. But if a student came to me and said they wanted to go skydiving, I would remind them that failure is not an option. Thank you very much.